Welcome back to the Porterverse Workbench. In this episode, we'll be covering the very first character created by Workbench, Edward. Edward is the Northwestern Railway's number 2 engine, and was also one of the first engines to ever work on the Northwestern Railway. He is a favorite among fans, myself included, and naturally, no Thomas Mann collection will be complete without the one that started all, so Edward was a must for me. And that day has finally come at last. Before I talk about the modeling process, let's dive into Edward's Porterverse backstory. Here we go. Edward began life as a Furnace Railway K2 class. However, he was a bit of an experimental type, as he was given a slightly larger boiler compared to the other K2s. The experiment results were deemed neutral, and the Furnace Railway didn't build any more K2s with these larger boilers, thus making Edward a one-off variant. He wore Furnace Railway Red from 1896 to 1919. 1919 was when he was purchased by the Tidmouth, Wellsworth, and Brendam Light Railway for mainline services. Edward was promptly repainted when he arrived, into the railway's livery, which consisted of a teal color with red frames and pale gold accenting. From then on, he would haul mostly passenger trains from Callan to Brendam, which was the railway's main line at the time. In 1923, the Tidmouth, Wellsworth, and Brendam Light Railway was grouped with the Sodor and Mainland Railway via the Railways Act, and thus became the Northwestern Railway, which spanned the entirety of the island of Sodor. The formation of the NWR led to all engines on the island being repainted into the new railway's colors. Engines that were primarily on passenger duties were painted into Northwestern blue with red lining. In this delivery that Edward would receive, as he was mostly assigned to passenger duties anyways. During the entire process, Edward was also fitted with a new enclosed cab, replacing his old Furness Railway cab. This was done to give his crew more protection from the elements and a little more privacy as well. In 1925, his splashers was widened to be flush with his cab for unknown reasons. In 1926, Edward was fitted with a new tender, this being the Fowler style. This was done to increase his fuel capacity and range. And in 1927, Edward was relocated to the Brendam branch line and became the primary runner of the line. After that, things play out pretty much the same as the railway series and TV series. For example, in 1969, Boko joined the branch line and now handles all freight services. And Edward is now exclusively the passenger engine. Edward often interacts with Bartholomew, the Brendam dock shunter, Cranky, Boko, Bill, Ben, Timothy, and all the other guys within the Brendam branch line vicinity. And this way you can find all Edward today, happily running the Brendam branch line. Edward's motto was relatively simple. Emphasis on relatively. He was made using an old mainline or present-day Bachmann 2-Pete engine class, which I bought from Hens. At the same time I ordered the original model, I ordered the custom body shell from Pix Productions. I knew it would be easier to just paint a new shell than to try to modify and carve out the 2-piece firebox. As on the 2-Pete, the firebox is more of a square, it's like a bell pair style, while Edward very clearly doesn't have that, so. When everything arrived around the same time, I did a test fit, and the body didn't fit. This 2P model is tender driven, and there's a die-cast block that goes kind of flush with the original firebox of the old shell, and this meant it wasn't able to fit properly. And so I did what I had to do in order to keep this project alive. I had to cut into the metal chassis block. I put the chassis block into a vise, and with a metal hacksaw, I very carefully cut down the set at the top. After that, I gave the chassis block a quick wash to remove any metal shavings that weren't seen, and it was good to go. The body now fit. Yippee! Next step was painting. I first started the painting process on the tender. I removed the old British Railways crest with just some rubbing alcohol and Q-tips. I then primed the model with my usual gray acrylic, and then primed the body shell. After the primer dried on both parts, I did some sanding on the body shell to remove some of the print lines. The print lines are still a bit noticeable, but who cares, they'll kind of fine to me. as long as they aren't super noticeable. I then painted on the blue color. Like with all my other Northwestern blue engines, the shaded blue I used was Apple Barrel's Cobalt Hue. After about 3 coats of blue, I did air details in black, like the writing board on a smoke box. I then did the lining. I used a red paint pen which had the tip cut out to make for more of a chiseled end for more precision, and then very carefully went over the molded bullet banding. I did the same thing for the splashers. I just went along the corners of the splashers with the paint pen, and it made for a very neat edge overall, I'd say. I then applied gold to the cab windows with just metallic Sharpie. Pretty straightforward process. And a similar painting process was applied to the tender. Following that whole nightmarish process with the number 2s, I sourced the smokebox door. This is actually from the original 2P body shell, which miraculously fits the front of the new body shell. And after all of that, Edwor was finally complete. I'm just really glad I finally have Edwor in the collection. He just feels so right, you know? And I know I say this a lot for models, but this is probably now in my top 5 favorite models. Edwor is within that ranks. So yeah. I suppose while I'm here, I should give some bench updates. If you recall from one of my previous videos, you know that my house is currently torn apart from mold remediation, including my room. Yeah, and then we had a toilet leak somehow upstairs, and that caused all the water to soot through the ceiling and into the destroyed living room right now. It looked like it was raining, guys. It was very bad. All my models and stuff are fine as they were upstairs and not within the flooded areas and stuff. But it was chaos when that happened. So it'll probably be a bit longer than what I originally anticipated until I can get back into my original room again. And do another installation of this series. As I took Edward's photographs well before this all started. So there probably won't be a Workbench episode for quite some time. But there is still some modeling stuff happening though. I'm working on a new OC. If you follow me on Twitter, you know who this is. This is Casella. She is a articulated logging engine for the Big City Logging Railroad. And I got her model recently, and I'm almost done with her. I just gotta weather her up as I'm recording this. Probably by the time this video goes up, she'll be done. And I'll try to get her video out by the summer, depending on when my house is fully back together. So yeah, it is a lot of chaos behind the scenes, to be honest. But regardless, we're pushing forward. Thank you all very much for watching this episode of Porterverse Workbench, and I shall see you all same time next week.